It's pretty brutal. Tech stocks are on a two-day losing streak as more investors are questioning the AI and hype and whether it can live up to it. The Nasdaq is down more than half a point. It's now pulled back 2.5% since the last week's record highs. And some of the concern comes from an MIT study, Massachusetts Institute of Technology. The authors say most companies have found no way to make money using generative AI. The head of OpenAI also seems to be tempering expectations. He reportedly told tech journalists investors are overexcited about the technology. Paul Krugman is with me now, Nobel-winning economist. He recently wrote that AI could be a short-term risk to the economy, considering all the power it uses. It's an interesting one, Paul. Good to see you, sir. Thank you. Because nobody doubts the significance of the contribution AI will make in the future. But to your point, we seem to be ignoring the costs of actually doing it and the difficulties of doing it and the profitability of doing it.
That's right. I mean, we've seen this cycle, many, many times. I think the first example would probably be the canal mania in Britain in the 1790s. People get, overexcited about a new technology. It's a good new technology. It will do real things, but it takes a while to figure out what to do with it. And you can lose a lot of money in the process. So you can have a bust before it really gets applied. And then we have this additional problem. It's as if you were building canals in the 1790s and there actually wasn't enough water to fill the canals, right? So we have, in addition to the question of whether the technology is really fully ready for prime time and whether we actually have the resources to go along with it.
I'm fascinated by the point you make in your article, which is it's even worse at one level because not only is there going to be a huge requirement for data centers and an extraordinary requirement for power, that we know, but this administration, the Trump administration, is cutting off the sustainable power future, solar, all the other renewables, by not investing in them.
That's right. They're cutting off the subsidies that were being used to construct, but they're also actively trying to block. We just saw the Trump administration is taking away areas of the ocean that were being set aside for wind farms. We're seeing active interventions to try and block solar farms. We just had a post from the president about blaming solar and wind power for rising electricity prices, which is complete nonsense. So you have an administration that is actively hostile to renewable energy, which has accounted for almost all recent additions to generation capacity.
When and where does it all sort of fall apart in your view? We all, those of us of a certain age, .com boom, .com bust. Are you foreseeing something similar with AI rise, AI fall?
It seems quite likely. I mean, predictions are hard, especially about the future. But this does definitely have a lot of the feel. I mean, it feels to me like we're partying like it's 1999, that we have enormous enthusiasm. And the one thing that is seeming to be, beyond what is justified by the business prospects. The technology is amazing, but the business prospects, we're not so sure. And, and we have an economy where half of recent growth is basically data center construction. It's a sluggish, slowly growing economy. We're not that far above stall speed, and half of our growth is coming out of these data centers. So if we are seeing, people don't have to decide this was a bad idea. They just have to lose some of their enthusiasm and we're in trouble.
Right, but the difficulty that I have with the truth with which you speak is that at the same time, I also know from experience of the internet, go back to the 1990s, .com boom and bust, but the internet is now a fundamental part of the global economy. It just all happened a lot slower than everybody had anticipated or expected, and people lost a lot of money on the way. Is that likely to be the prognosis with AI?
Quite possibly. On my Substack, I put up one of those old Quest ads. Some of us
Right.
may remember, where they had these, marvels of the internet. You can go to a grungy motel room and watch any movie ever made, and we basically live in that world. The problem was that everybody who was investing hundreds of billions of dollars on that prospect back in 1999, 2000, lost their
Yep.
money.
I want to just talk about the Fed and all these rumours of who's going to get the job, who's going to get it. I mean, the independence of the Fed, and particularly you're seeing today, of course, the story of Lisa Cook being pressured to resign. The independence of the Fed, it's hard to gauge how much damage to the fabric of integrity is done by this onslaught of attacks. How much do you think's being done?
Well, I think it's very serious. I mean, I'm extremely worried. We got through. We had a miracle. In 2022, we had high inflation. Lots of people thought it would be very expensive to get it down, that we'd have to go through years of high unemployment. Instead, it was basically painless. Inflation came right back down to the 2.5% or so range without any bulge in unemployment. A lot of that had to do with the credibility that an independent Fed had built.
Right.
People basically believed that inflation would not persist. If we undermine the Fed independence, then we're in big trouble.
Jim Bullard, who speaking on this program a few moments ago, said he did not believe the tariffs were inherently inflationary. He did not see inflation as being the problem in the short to medium term, and that he could foresee up to 100 basis points in interest rate cuts without stoking inflation. Do you buy that?
No, if he doesn't think that the tariffs are inflationary in the short run, that disqualifies him for the Fed chair. I mean, it's obvious, it's very clear, and we're seeing it in the data that the tariffs will raise prices. They'll raise prices maybe 1.5, 2 percentage points. Now, whether that will get entrenched in inflation, that's much more arguable. It may be that this is something that the Fed should look through. That's an argument that you can certainly make. And I understand that, Waller, for example, has made that argument. But if you think that it doesn't raise prices at all, boy, that shows a fundamental misunderstanding
No,
of what's happening as we speak.
maybe I'm paraphrasing him wrongly. I suspect it's the latter, that he
I hope
thinks
so.
it's a one-off shock. It's not going to feed
It,
into a
it,
spiral of inflation.
yeah, we don't know that. I mean, and the Fed needs to be both aware of that possibility, but also not assume that that's
Right.
right. So it's a very hard time to make Fed policy. It does not help to have the president demanding 300 basis points of cuts, which is what he's been saying.
Paul, it's great to see you, and thank you for joining us. And your Substack is always most definitely worth reading, and we'll show the details of it in a moment. Thank you, sir, for taking time to talk to us. Thank you.